The pre-sale market in Vancouver is in deep trouble, and it's going to have a profound effect, not only on real estate prices, but for the people who work in the industry. And I'm not talking only about the developers and the sales teams, but also all the construction workers, the trades, the architects, and the thousands of people that are required to build these new homes. And while you may have heard or caught some of the headlines kind of touting about how in trouble this industry is, in this video, I'm going to share 9 charts that really deep dive and demonstrate exactly what's happening and exactly how worrisome things are. Plus, it's going to give you insights into what you can expect in the pre-sale world all the way out to 2030. Let's dive in. As a quick snapshot, this slide shows you that new condo sales in Q1 of 2025, well, they dropped nearly 60% compared to last year and are the lowest since 2009. Sales have declined across all 3 sectors, where high-rise have seen a whopping 75% decline, mid-rise homes are down 25%, and low-rise at a minus 58% lower in sales. A big part of the reason that prices are getting pushed down is, of course, inventory. There is a lot of new product on the market and a lot of pre-sale centers that are struggling to sell their pre-con homes. New inventory reached a record high in Q1 of this year, hitting nearly 13,000 units, and that represents over 23 months of supply. So we base that on the average monthly rate of sales going back 12 months. This essentially means that if no new product were brought to market starting today, it would still take almost 2 years to absorb all the active inventory for sale within the pre-sale world. And while that is high, when we look to the Greater Toronto area, they actually have 4.5 years of active inventory right now. This is almost a national issue, with the epicenter ultimately being the Greater Toronto area and Vancouver closely following behind. Now, this chart shows that the average dollar per square foot is at $1,304, and it drops slightly and claims to be the second highest Q4 on record. I think that's a misprint, and I'm going to show you a few other data points in this video that support a much lower price per foot. So let's move on. So this slide includes a couple key points that I want to share with you. When we talk about how many active sites are out there, essentially how many pre-sale centers and cranes in the sky, from last year, it's actually an increase by about 12%. There's about 273 active projects across the Lower Mainland right now. And I'm going to get into why that's actually increasing in a market that's clearly decreasing. And this starts to portray when we look at this second line here, right? The new projects that have opened, that's down 33% year over year. I mean, there's only 10. Only 10 projects have come to market in the entire quarter. And that is incredibly low, especially when we look at how high it was in just the quarter before at 26. When we correlate that to how many units are within each project, that's down a massive 41%. So clearly the projects that are being brought to market are of a smaller scale. This is further emphasized when we look at the total unit sales. Okay, this is where things are truly devastating, right? Q1 of 2024, there's over 2,100 pre-sale units sold. Fast forward to today, quarter 1 of 2025 only saw 864. Okay, that's an almost 60% collapse in sales, and that is going to get worse. Expanding more on the active inventory, look at this, just under 13,000, up 41% from this time last year. And you look at the line below this, the sales to inventory ratio, we're at 2%. Okay, anything under 12% is considered a buyer's market, and we're at 2%. It was 8% just 1 year ago, a total collapse of 71% lower. This thing is on life support. Look just below that, the launch price PSF, that stands for per square foot. As you can see, it was about $1,107 last year, and now we're at $966 a square foot on average. Okay, that's a 13% drop. Now that is the blended average. So we are looking at not only your sort of closer to Vancouver concrete high rise, but also your more suburban wood frame, right? Which is going to come in a lot lower, obviously on a per foot basis. But still, to see that drop below 1,000 is remarkable. Last line is worth exploring too. This is units completed. So these are condos that have just finished construction and are ready for move in or are sitting there empty and still for sale. That inventory level increased 46% just from last year. When we break it down by sort of these sub markets, there's some really interesting numbers I wanted to share with you. First, right in the middle, it's a bit small, but I'll read it out to you. Coquitlam. Okay. The blue line is 2024, and the sort of lighter gray line is this year, 2025. So when we look at the new sales by these submarkets, first one being Coquitlam, it dropped from 540 down to 86 in the Q1 of this year. Just an absolute collapse. And it's even worse when we look at Metrotown. Look at that right down, sort of in the just below that one, the biggest blue line. 270 units sold in Q1 of last year, 0 in 2025. 0. It's not even on the board with a single sale. And then lastly, the second largest blue line there of sales, 2024, the Guildford area in Surrey, 507, dropped all the way down to 190. I mean, these are dramatic numbers and dramatic reductions in sales that are really being felt, and especially in those areas. So let's expand now on that total inventory to give you an idea of how many homes are actually available. So the total new home, this is brand new condos, brand new inventory, it hit an all-time high in Q1 of this year. This is demonstrated, of course, by this chart where we've got both the condos and single family, and then your blue line there is the total amount available. New condo inventory is up 40% from this time last year, and the new single family inventory is up 30% year over year. That's the green line across the bottom. It's actually the highest it's been in 11 years. When we look back to 2018, inventory is up 480%. That's only 7 years ago. And the thing is, more projects are coming to add to these inventory levels, at least in the short term. This is going to get even worse. So let's talk about what's happening with prices. So average launch prices for new condo apartments, well, it's been easing essentially after reaching that recent all-time high, which was seen in the third quarter of 2023. And as mentioned earlier, it has now fallen below that $1,000 per square foot mark in the first quarter this year. And when you look back, we are actually representing a 4-year low in average per foot prices for pre-sale condos right now. Note that these prices do not reflect basically a constant quality product, but rather a mix of product and location of units available to purchase in these newly opened projects. So developers are ultimately coming to the market because they may have to, right? That train may have already left the station, and they recognize the headwinds they're up against, so they have to lower their prices to have any chance of absorption. So let's do a quick history lesson in supply versus demand. This chart goes all the way back to 2008, and there's two different lines here. One is that blended price, and the second one, the lighter kind of pink line, is inventory. So you will notice that inventory, of course, goes up, goes down, but the price does almost the opposite. The more inventory there is, the lower the price. Look at 2012, 2013, and of course, look at today. And the opposite happened when inventory was at its lowest back in 2017, 2018. Guess what happened? Prices were at their highest. Funny how that happens, right? If you've ever doubted the supply and demand theory or economics, have a look at this chart. But here we go. So prices are clearly trending down as inventory is clearly trending up. For those of you who actually are considering a pre-sale unit, which I know there's very few of you, but for those that might actually be going, okay, there's got to be some deals out there right now, right? Well, you are correct. There are absolutely some great deals out there. And if it's something that you want to add to your portfolio, feel free to reach out. I can share the ones that I think are going to have the highest rebound. Here's a chart I found very interesting. And if you've ever felt like the size of condos keeps getting smaller, well, you are absolutely right. So check this out. This chart also goes back to 2008. And the light blue line that starts at the higher level there, it demonstrates the average unit size per square foot. And I mean, back in 2008, they were averaging almost 1,000 square feet per unit, whereas today it's closer to 700. They've shrunk by 30%. Okay. And so you may ask yourself, why? Why are the average homes getting smaller? A couple of reasons I think are pretty glaringly obvious. One is cost, right? If the average mom and pop investor is the person who are buying the vast majority of these pre-sale units, well, they have a threshold as to what their total purchase price is. And so developers trying to attract as many investors as possible have to keep it price sensitive. Let's say today it's $500K is maybe your average pre-sale condo price in and around Greater Vancouver. for a studio or a one bed. And so if you could buy 700 square feet for 500K 10 years ago, well, great, sure, that was the number. But then as that psychological threshold of 500K price point kept getting pushed up, well, the developers only had one choice. Now is to kind of build smaller. So now that same one bed or studio that was 700 square feet, well, now it's 500 or even 450. But they're trying to keep it as accessible as possible so they can have the absorption, they can have the sales. I think also there's a bit of a livability element to this. And what I mean by that is developers have gotten very creative in adding a ton of great amenities and literally master planning communities around these buildings. So while, 500 square feet is a small home, when you can walk out your door to, a giant gym, a big pool, 50 restaurants within 5 minutes, whatever it is, and you ultimately end up using your home primarily just sleeping and maybe eating or cooking a bit, it doesn't feel quote unquote as small when you have so many great amenities within, let's say, a 5-minute walk. So I think that's part of why they're being accepted as well. A lot of homes do feel too small lately, especially condos. And if the investor bid is going to disappear for a couple of years, there is going to be a greater demand for larger and more livable homes. So this trend downwards in the average square foot of size for condos, I think it's going to start pushing back up. And I would love to see that. A lot of it's going to come down to cost, right? Developers can only build to a certain dollar figure based on their materials costs and their labor costs, etc. And so they're trying to bring homes to market that are greatly needed, but they have to face the realities of their pro forma too. So somehow costs need to come down to also help prices come down, but also help the size of homes increase to a more livable size. This is very much a Vancouver channel, but I do want to share that this pre-sale collapse is national. And it's really, really centered in the Greater Toronto area. And this chart certainly highlights that. I mean, look at Hamilton, for example. Year over year sales down 88%. Kitchener-Waterloo, 71%. GTA as a whole down 61%. It also shows here that there's a couple other areas where we're starting to see some cracks. Like, look at Calgary. Calgary is actually down 80% year over year, followed by Edmonton at 51%. So the slowdown in the pre-sale market is happening across the country, predominantly located in Ontario, then BC, and of course now in Alberta too. The last slide today is about the pipeline. Okay, we kind of have a great idea of what's happening today, but what's going to happen in the next 5+ years? Well, at the end of Q1 of this year, there was about 52,500 new condo units in projects that were either under construction or in pre-construction stages, right? And this is in Vancouver. About 3,700 new condo apartments were completed or delivered in Q1 of this year. Now that's up 46% from this time last year. But based on scheduled occupancy dates and only considering units currently under construction, the completion of condominium apartments could actually be potentially higher by the end of 2025 than in recent years. So, why? Why would developers be building into a high inventory, price lowering environment? Well, you got to remember, from the time that a developer goes to sale, like builds their presentation center and puts these things on sale, to the time they finish those units and hand over the keys, that time gap can be 4 to 6 years or even longer. I mean, if you're familiar with the Pier West building in New Westminster, they were selling units. They went to sale in 2017. They just handed over keys this year in 2025. That's 8 years from sale to move in. That gives you an example of how long these projects can take some time. So again, that analogy of once the train leaves the station, it can't stop, right? So a lot of the homes under construction today, a lot of the cranes that you see in the sky now, well, these are constructing homes that were built largely during that 2021, 2022 boom era. And it's also important to recognize that even with the relatively robust pipeline that we have today of new condos coming, there have been dozens of projects that have either been put on hold or canceled altogether over the past few years. And this is why things might get very interesting in the years to come. New projects coming to market are dropping dramatically, as we see in the building permit data. So while it feels like there's a ton of new inventory today, well, that's going to shift in the years to come. So while it feels like there's a lot of inventory today, with more coming, even in the short term, well, when we start to look further out, like 2028 and beyond, the current forecast of new homes, well, that drops to near zero. And if the majority of the inventory is absorbed between now and say 2028, then you can start to see the vision of the potential shortfall of homes around that time. Because of course, what happens is once the marketplace realizes, oh my goodness, we need a ton of homes now, and they start up those engines again and start building, well, as we pointed out earlier, it can take 4 to 6 to 8 years to go from, okay, wow, we need more homes now, to actually handing over those keys. That is what's happening in the pre-sale world in Vancouver right now. So what do you do with all this data? What do you do with this information? Well, one, it's probably great dinner conversation, but two, maybe you are actually considering a condo in the future and you want to keep an eye on what's happening here. Well, honestly, just feel free to reach out. I'd be happy to chat more about your goals and where and when it might be advantageous for you to start considering picking up one of these pre-sales. As I mentioned, there are a ton of deals out there right now, and developers are very generous with what they're trying to provide to offload some of their inventory. Also, you may be one of these people that has a pre-sale condo under construction now, and you're wondering what to do to best benefit when it is completed next week, next month, next year, whenever. Again, happy to talk about how to best position yourself there as well. That's it for today. Look, if you've maybe heard a horror story or two about the pre-sale condo world, love to hear it. Please put it in the comments below. Thanks so much for tuning in. Have a great week.